Good evening, everybody. I'm Nils Jensen, and on behalf of Council, I welcome everyone to the public hearing. And I call the public hearing to order. There is one bylaw to be considered tonight. That's 4696, and that's in regards to Heritage Revitalization Agreement regarding 2031 Runnymede. And this, in a minute, I'm going to ask Mr. Anderson to give us some details on the particular bylaw. So Council has already dealt with this as first reading and second reading, and then what we've done is we have directed this public hearing as is required by the provincial legislation. And as I said, the staff from Building and Planning Department will give an overview in a minute, and then following that, and following a couple of other steps that we're required to do according to the provincial legislation, I will invite people to make presentations to Council. So after the applicant, then there'll be the members of the public who wish to address us, and I'll ask everyone to please give their name and the municipality in which they reside. This is a public hearing, and so it's not a kind of a chance for us to debate the issue with the public. Our job at Council here is to listen, and I can assure you we all have an open mind as to the eventual outcome, and no one's prejudged this application. So, but it isn't a question and answer period. From time to time, if you do raise questions, and I'm going to ask that staff capture some of these if they're germane to the issue, and then perhaps respond to them. So when you do come up and speak, I will ask you just to focus on the proposed bylaw, be as concise as possible. There's no time limit on that, but do be respectful of your time and the others. And there's no clapping, cheering, or booing. And we try to create an open atmosphere where everyone, pro or con, or have made up their mind, can come to the microphone and speak. So, and as chair, I may require you to focus from time to time on the issue. So, I should also note that if you've received an acknowledgement from our staff, that means that the correspondence you may have submitted is on the agenda tonight, and there's really no need for you to read it into the record. It is before us and will be part of the consideration before we make the decision. Once we finish this, once we finish this public hearing, the next step is to start the general council meeting at 7 o'clock. So between when finishing this and the time we start, we can't receive any more information from you. That would invalidate the public hearing. And for that purpose, I will be recommending that to council that when we start the agenda at 7, we move this particular issue right up front, and we deal with it right off the bat to make a final decision. So as I said, there's a number of perfunctory or steps that we have to walk through. We start with Mr. Anderson, then there's written submissions which we receive, and if there are late written submissions, we may have to read them into the record. We'll see if there are any of those. I suspect there's not. And then at the end of which I'll invite the applicant and then members of the public, okay? So with that, Mr. Anderson, welcome, and please give us the overview and the purpose of 4696. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, and those in attendance. Yes, we do have an item on this evening's agenda. It's referring to bylaw number 4696, and that is a bylaw to consider a heritage revitalization agreement for 2031 Runnymede Avenue. The agreement, if adopted, would retain the heritage designated residence in its existing location and require ongoing maintenance of the home. Many of the required upgrades to the home have already been completed by the owners, It would also facilitate a 2-lot subdivision of the entire site with one single-family dwelling located on each proposed lot. And through this revitalization agreement, zoning bylaw requirements would also be relaxed for minimum lot frontage for the northerly lot, for front lot line setback for a new single-family home, and for front lot line setback for a proposed detached garage, and that's to be located near the existing home. So with that, Your Worship, that's the general introduction to the bylaw.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. We've received some written submissions prior to July 16th. It's been distributed, and if I can motion to receive those under item number 2.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Now, what written submissions to the 17th of September, 2018, not previously distributed to council members, be received. Are there any such documents?
Your Worship, no.
Thank you very much. And step 4, are there any documents which have been received but not distributed to council?
Your Worship, not that we're aware of.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to ask the applicant to introduce the proposal.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Ann Hillier. I live at 2031 Runnymede Avenue.
Welcome.
I hadn't anticipated going through the visual presentation that we made when we came earlier to Council for first and second reading, because it had been distributed with the materials, and so I thought it was redundant to do that. So really what I'd like to do very briefly is highlight what we have done to the property, because that was the negotiation that we were offering to Oak Bay, was that we would undertake the rehabilitation and the restoration of the property, the house and the property, when we purchased it. So over the course of we purchased the property in 2013, and we've been, sorry, I'm just going to try to not rattle my paper. We've been working on the property since that time. We lived in it a year after we purchased it because there were some things that needed to be done that really made living in it not possible for the first year. So getting to the exterior of the house, we've, and I should say that we have largely completed the work on the residence itself. There may be a little bit of interior painting done. The exterior painting is now finished. We've had permits for all the work that we've done, and we've had all of those permits now signed off on. So from the point of view of the major work to the house, it's completed and it's been approved through the municipal process.
I'm just going to ask to stop you there. Nothing to do with what you're saying. I just got a text from Paris saying that our missing councillor is standing by to join the public hearing. Are we in a position to have him join?
Your Worship, I believe if he wanted to call in, he can do that.
He calls in?
If he's standing by, I will call him. How's that?
He says, quote, "I'm standing by to join." I don't know what time it is in Paris, but I suspect it's quite early, about 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock.
And Chair, I have a question, if I may.
To do with
Item 4.
item 4. Okay, I'm just going to ask you to hold on to that question. And I'm going to just wait to see if we can have Councillor Croft join us. And just while that's going on, I can inform the members of the public that Councillor Croft has to be present for the public hearing in order to be able to vote at the council meeting. So if he's not present during this part, then he would be disqualified from voting at the public hearing, at the council meeting. There are exceptions to that rule, and that is if minutes have been prepared and reviewed, but of course we won't have the minutes.
To join the conference, enter your... At the tone, please state your name, followed by the number sign.
Warren.
Announcing participant.
Warren. So now we need him, so if you want to text him, unless you want to call him, so he needs to, because it's not
Announcing
working.
participant.
So he needs to.
That's his number there. Yeah. Oh. Good morning, Councillor Croft. What time is it there?
Bonjour.
Okay, thank you very much for getting up or maybe not going to bed. Thank you very much. We are in the public hearing. The applicant is about 5 minutes into the presentation, and it's really a kind of a historical where are we now, when the property was purchased and work being done. So at this point, really there is not other information that's been dealt with. So I'm just going to again hold on to you a little more. That there was a question from Councillor Zelka about item number 4 on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sorry, we're moving along so fast, it slipped by me. You were asking whether there were any further documents that were made available. I did copy all councillors on my request to the Director of Building and Planning for, hopefully, the original statement of significance that may have been related to the 2010, the original 1980 heritage designation, or possibly the 2007 heritage registration. And I didn't hear a response. So I just wanted to find out whether that document could be made available, since the only statement of significance I've been able to find is the 2015 revised one. Thank you.
Okay, number 4 actually dealt with correspondence, but since you asked a question in any event, is there other documentation that you have from the 80s, was it? Yep.
Yes, when the property was placed on the Community Heritage Register, there was a statement of significance prepared. We do have that document. However, what's before council is a new statement of significance as part of the Heritage Revitalization Agreement. I actually didn't understand that, Councillor Zelker, you wanted a copy of that brought to the meeting.
Okay.
I certainly have that information available if there are any questions related to it during this meeting.
Okay, what's before us is an application which has attached to it the statement of significance, or is part of it, and that's the one that we have to make the decision on. Okay?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Zelka. Now, Ms. Hillier.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Early on when we purchased the property, we started working with the heritage consultant, Jonathan Yardley. Unfortunately, Mr. Yardley have passed away, and we then continued our work with Donald Luxton and his associates. And in the course of that work, Jonathan had started a conservation plan, and then Luxton and co. took up that work, and it's a much more comprehensive document than what had been available prior to that. It's a conservation plan that does update certain aspects of what the original statement of significance was, but it's minor changes. There was a mistake in the shape of the roof and a couple of other things. So it's similar, it's not identical, and the heritage consultant that worked with Donald Luxton was the person who actually prepared the new statement of significance and included it in the conservation plan. So the conservation plan is the document that we've worked with for the years that we've been working on the house. We haven't yet had Donald Duxton back to sign off on the work being done according to the plan, but it's been useful guidance for us in order to undertake the type of work that we've been doing. And it incorporates by reference the standards that are used across Canada for the rehabilitation, restoration, and upgrades to heritage buildings in Canada. So that's been helpful, and we followed it. And it's also good guidance for the purposes of the future of the property, because it incorporates by reference, the conservation plan incorporates by reference that document, which provides the gold standard, I guess, for the work of upgrading and maintaining heritage buildings in Canada. Does that help you? Sorry, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to answer you directly.
So carry on.
Thank you. So we have done largely, as I said, we've completed the work to the residence itself. We certainly haven't completed the work to the overall property. It's the property is 1.25 acres, and when we purchased the property, it was largely covered with invasive species, ivy that grew up the oak trees about 20 to 25 feet, lots of bamboo, lots of holly, lots of St. John's wort, overrun with snowberry. Ivy and bamboo were probably the worst culprits. And so we worked the first couple of years to eradicate those invasive species, and we worked with an arborist who spent quite a long time working on the oak trees. There's other significant trees on the property as well, but really worked hard to try to make sure that the oak trees were brought back to a state of better health. And was also helpful in assisting us in getting the invasive species off the property. So following that, we started to be able to reconstruct a garden area that is still very much a work in progress. We started on the south side of the property in anticipation of an application for a subdivision on the north side. We started on the south side, where the garden is larger than the property on the north side. And the street side of the property as well has been worked on for some time. But it's still very much a work in progress. And if you look at the photographs of the building, you can see that there's still lots more that needs to be done over the next while. So in terms of the exterior of the house, the roof was stripped and resheeted. New shingles were installed. All the flat areas were stripped and repaired, and new torch-on material installed. We had quite a number of places where the existing torch-on was leaking into the interior of the house, and that was necessary to take the balustrades off of the porte cochere and other balcony areas to get to the torch-on roof, and then it had to be rebuilt from there. The fascia boards were repaired and replaced. Downspouts and gutters were replaced. The stucco was repaired. There were a number of places where it had been compromised over the years. The only significant exterior change to the house was we changed the windows that are in the north elevation. They had been changed at some point in the history of the house to large plate glass windows that would not have been original and were quite out of keeping with the character of the house. So we put new windows in under the authority of a heritage alteration permit on the north side they mirror the type of window and the casings for the rest of the house. And the benefit of that is that they're energy efficient because they had to be replaced. We did the exterior handrails, and we had to redo a great deal of the porte cochere, which was a very large job because it had to be done in stages. There was a lot of that porte cochere that was actually rotten. And the balustrades, mercifully, were still in good condition, but pretty much the rest of it had to be replicated. The north side stairs of the house were unsafe and were unusable, as a matter of fact. And we, again, under a heritage alteration permit, replaced those stairs on the north side. The exterior drainage was redone. We had some problems with water coming into the lower level of the house because of the patio behind was sloping towards the house. And so we had some engineering help to have us redo that drainage so that it goes down the other direction, and it's solved the drainage problems that we have with the house. And we updated the water service from the street, and we have just recently completed the painting of the exterior. So we're largely in a position now where the main work on the exterior of the house is complete. Much of the interior work, we had a lot more interior work than we had originally anticipated. Although that's not covered by the heritage designation, it protects the structure of the building and ensures that it will be viable for decades to come. We completely redid the heating system, the plumbing system. The electrical was largely knob and tube. We have modern heating in the house now, although we retained the existing radiators. We had them cleaned and redone and reinstalled into the house, and we've zoned the heating system of the house so that it's more energy efficient. And it's actually a really not very expensive house to live in from the point of view of heating it, because it is, we were able to insulate many areas. Even though we have existing windows, we were able to insulate walls in a way that really improved its energy efficiency, which I think is really important if we want to protect heritage in the long term, that people don't live in drafty houses with sweaters on. We also did some engineering work to ensure that the house was structurally sound, and we did some earthquake bolting to the foundation to ensure that it was better protected in the event of an earthquake. The house had been renovated, I think, in probably the 50s, prior to the Ellises owning the house, according to the Ellis family, who we dealt with extensively. And it had quite an unsympathetic renovation done to it, I think, in the 50s, because it had a lot of grass cloth that was popular at the time. And so we took those materials out and have spent quite a lot of time re-trimming the house in a way that's typical of a McClure house. We had some fragments in the house of existing trim that we were able to use to follow. Not very much, but if you are in the house now, it's extensively trimmed in a way that would be what you'd expect a house of that era to look like, which was quite in contrast to the way that the interior looked when we bought it. And it has lovely features like an original butler's pantry that we were able to refurbish and maintain and things like that. So our work right now is largely to continue with the exterior work on the property itself. There's lots of work to be done on the east side. We're sort of coming around to the east side and then to the north side. But our intention is to try to have some of the area left in quite large open spaces because of the stand, the Gary Oak stand, which spans the east back of the property, and there's quite a lovely stand of really quite healthy looking Gary Oaks now, and so it won't be gardened typically as manicured a garden as it would be if it were not for those Gary Oaks. We're going to leave some regular native grasses, and there's a bit of conversion going on in that area now, but we're not intending to garden it in the way that we've gardened some of the other portions of the property that have less Gary Oaks and more other trees that wouldn't be in conflict with that. So I don't know if I have anything else to add. If you had any questions of me at this time, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, now the applicant has spoken. I invite members of the public to come forward. Do we have a little something on the, we're going to ask people to write their names also in their municipality. It's there, okay? Just so we get the spelling and we know who you are. So I call for the first time for people to come forward. Okay, your name, your municipality, and then just write it out there.
Sure, my name is Brian Barry.
Hi, Mr. Barry. And whoever's next, they could be maybe signing on while Mr. Barry's speaking, if that's not an inconvenient. Maybe you can actually push that side a little bit, if you don't mind. Just, yep. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to council. I'd like to say that maybe Mr. Councillor Zelko's question about the original heritage documents might be of interest to you, because it's quite a bit of interest to many of us in the neighborhood. We were privileged. My wife, my family, and I moved to Runnymede Place, and we're in the north adjacent lot. Really the one that, at least one of two, that will be most affected by this subdivision. We've lived there since 1992. We bought the place from Mr. Thomas Goldring, who who sold it to us, having turned down a couple of developers because he anticipated developers wanting to subdivide that lot, and he didn't want it subdivided, and he preferred to leave it to a family. So we were fortunate enough to live there since '92, and we've known Mrs. Ellis from that time until she passed away. And it is important to know that Mrs. Ellis was single-mindedly devoted to the heritage status of that property. The house, the gardens, and then the trees. In fact, we tried to buy 10 feet of the north side from Mrs. Ellis because we anticipated people after Mrs. Ellis were gone wanting to develop the lot. And she mulled it over, and I gather she talked to her accountant, I think she said, and some family members, and she came to us and said she wouldn't sell it to us because she was confident that no one would turn the heritage status around and start to build on it. And she had full confidence in that. And apparently she'd spoken to Oak Bay municipality at the time and had all the confidence in the world and decided not to split 10 feet off. And that was fine with us because that was what we were worried about was the subdivision at the time. It's a unique property, as is perhaps that cluster of properties and the size of those properties. And its beauty, the sacrifice Mrs. Ellis made, given its place in the unique neighborhood consisting of medium and large lots, many natural beautiful features such as Gary Oak Groves, are all important to us in the neighborhood and our family to have preserved. I think the original documents with regard to heritage designation should be considered because I think they were important. Clearly allowing the subdivision with bylaw variances requested will send a strong signal to neighbors and to developers that it's open season to now split off lots. And there's no question our lot with the variances that are being requested, 60-foot frontage, will be subdividable. The lot across the street will be very subdividable. The number of lots in that area will be subdividable. The march will be on, and that entire area will be very much changed. And not to provide cheaper housing for higher density, lower income situations. It's really for very high income, very expensive properties. We are going to be affected most clearly by this. The only way to build a house on that property is on top of the rock, essentially, and on top of the rock would tower above our property and virtually take the sunlight out of the south side of our property, particularly the house and the front lot. No one from Oak Bay Council, engineering, or the applicants have come and spoken to us about any of that. And I think that's completely inappropriate when such a huge change would be made to their property and our property. In fact, the heritage designation itself. These issues were extensively debated in 2011, I think it was the time. I believe you were a councillor at the time, Mayor Jensen. It was a packed house, I think, for more than one council meeting. Extensively debated and turned down. The property was purchased clearly at a devalued price because of its heritage designation. And now it's time to split that off after the work is done to make money, and I don't think that's appropriate, particularly given the issues I've already talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. Just going to ask staff to note about what happened in 2011 and whether or not it was turned down. I have a recollection.
I'm Celine Berry.
Hello.
Nils knows me
Yeah,
from...
you stand in front of the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Nils knows me from Scouts and
Yep.
for their kids. I'm Brian's wife. I live on the north side of the property, and I'm a really big gardener. I don't know if anybody's gone by. It's my house.
I am going to ask you to stand right in front of the
sorry.
microphone, because we can hear you.
Okay.
But the people at home, unless you're
Okay.
right in front of the microphone, or people in Paris can't hear you.
So I've been concerned about that lot, and I was the one that wanted to buy that property from Mrs. Ellis, and unfortunately it didn't go through. So I've talked to Anne many, many times about the lot. First of all, I'm concerned about the change of plans. It isn't representative on the billboard. It says the lot is going to be quite a bit smaller than now what it's been approved. So the public hasn't been notified that, and we were only notified that by letter, everybody, last week. So that really changes what we were told was going to be happening. First of all, as my husband said, we are really going to lose all our sunlight if it's built next to us, because the land goes up quite a bit. The rock that is there is in our basement, and I'm talking, it's literally in our basement. Our foundation is built on that rock, okay? So the next thing is, first of all, we were told that the old lot that's smaller, and the neighborhood was invited to Bruce and Ann's, and that they had a plan for a house, and they were going to build this house and sell it and stay in the house, the heritage home. Then I was told in front of my house that the large house is too large for them because they're getting old, and there's only the two of them, so they're going to build the smaller house on the new lot for themselves and sell the big house. Then I've been told that council told Bruce and Ann that they needed to extend the lot line back all the way to the back property line, and then she was going to sell the lot. And I know that that they inquired about how much they would get for either size of lot. Now, the other thing I'm quite concerned about, and I know about this because one day I was out gardening in my front yard, and the arborist from Oak Bay came and talked to Bruce about all the limbs on the massive Gary oak tree that's on the front boulevard has to be pruned down, all these big, for the roof line of this tall house that's going to be built. So, and there's also other Gary oaks that are going to be cut. If the house would have been on the other side of the property, so they would have lost their view. They might have lost a bit of sun, and there's only one tree that would have had to go down, not a bunch of trees and not a boulevard tree. I think that, things should be considered. I also don't really feel like the parking is going to be adequate. There's a basement suite in there. Right now, there's at least two cars for Bruce and Ann, and then there's 3 other cars in this gravel pit of a parking lot on the side all the time. Now, you're just asking for a double car garage for a house that size. It's not adequate. It's not. If you go into the uplands and everybody has big houses, they have a lot of space. Now, you're saying it's going to be a legal suite. So where are these people going to park? We don't have sidewalks around our area. They park on the boulevard, which is grass, and it's mud all winter. And we've had that for the whole time that all the renovations around our neighborhood have gone on. So that's all I have to say. And I've been living here, and we're friends with all our neighbors. Most of the people, there's families on our street. There's little children. There's going to be another driveway in that little tiny narrow lane. If you guys have driven there, it's a total blind spot. We had a massive oak tree on our front property that had to be taken down because it had been hit by cars so many times. So I just don't think that it's good for the neighborhood. And Bruce and Ann aren't planning on living there. It's not going to be their home. It's a developer's move, and so that's, I don't mean to make enemies here, but this is it's our home, and we're planning on staying there until, like our neighbors, till we have to be taken out in a wheelchair. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Next speaker, please.
Eva Lupin. Shall I write down? My husband and myself are the immediate neighbors of the property on
I'm not sure I heard your name.
Lupin, Eva Lupin.
Thank you. Ms. Lupin?
Your Honor, councillors. We are immediate neighbors to the south of 2031, and we've been watching the whole charade since 2011. And I wanted to tell you briefly that I strongly, and my husband, object to the 2031 Runnymede Avenue Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization bylaw. If passed, it would set two major dangerous precedences in Oak Bay. Number one, it would facilitate the destruction of the heritage properties as opposed to the houses, because it's property, not the house, which was registered. Second, it would encourage future developers by rewarding them by a way of subdivision of heritage properties. Over the 8 years, there were many expressions of concern and objection. Hundreds of letters, emails, petitions, as well as the first in Oak Bay public demonstration in front of this building were held. Everything was ignored. This council, in its function of serving the community, should have no difficulty in deciding whether to put interests of speculating developers or in the interests of the majority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lupin. Any other speakers?
Hi. My name's Heather Sweeney. I live at 2028 Runnymede Avenue, which is right across the street from the 2031. Some of you may recognize me or know me because my husband and I bought 2028 in 2012. It was a heritage house that was in complete disrepair, very similar to 2031. Had to be, you're talking about doing the plumbing, the electrical, etc. I get it. We did it. Okay, so we have renovated a heritage house and yard. Before I continue, I just want to make sure that council has received the letter that I emailed today. You've got it? Okay. And the petition? Okay, thank you. So I work. So last Friday was the first opportunity I had to get to City Hall and speak to somebody about the application. One of my concerns is that this is designated heritage land, and it's rare to have the lands designated. So subdividing such lands, I believe, will set a precedent in Oak Bay and change our community forever. I was told that day by one of the city staff that this isn't really a new thing in Oak Bay. There have been other properties such as 644 Beach Drive and 960 Foul Bay Road that had already been approved for similar multiple lot divisions. And so I went home and I went online and I looked into those properties. And my understanding is that, first of all, neither of those properties, the houses or the lands, were designated. And in fact, I couldn't even find them on the Heritage Registry. So we're talking apples and oranges here. So I agree with previous speakers that if you allow the subdivision of a designated heritage property, like Blair Gowie, you are setting a precedent. And you're going to tell people, the message is going to be that Oak Bay is fair game for developers. Interestingly, I also found online when I was looking into this, Abstract Developments were the ones who did the Beach Drive property. And they spent 2 years in consultation with neighbors before the HRA was approved by council. And in the case of the Fowl Bay Road property, Dewhurst Development personally contacted neighbors for their input. And changes were made to the developer's proposal as a result. These changes included changing the setbacks that they had originally asked for and keeping driveways as far away from neighboring homes as possible, in addition to other changes that they made. So, and residents at that hearing, public hearing, confirmed that Dewhurst met with them personally several times in order to accommodate their concerns. So, I've explained to you, my family lives directly across Runnymede Avenue from this developer. He wants to drastically reduce the setbacks, add a garage, and legalize a rental suite. And if that's approved by you, then we all know he's going to subdivide. So we will be, like Celine, I love to be out in my garden. And my garden faces the north side of Blair Gowie. I'm going to be staring at that new driveway into that lot in the corner every time I'm in my yard. You have to, I know I'm going to say this again, but you have to understand these are significant changes to an historical property. But the developer has not made any attempts to speak to either my husband or myself personally about any of this. Not once. And I live as far as you, Mr. Jensen, from their property line. So I'd just like to say in closing, when someone offers to designate their historical house and land, they are in effect providing a gift to the community. If you agree to allow this developer's application, you as council will be robbing the community of this gift. That's a shameful legacy. And I guarantee you, people won't soon forget it. That's all I have to say. I should ask, or I should say that Dr. Naismith and his wife Jo Marie are out of the country. They live on Runnymede Place, and they have provided. They've asked me to read a letter that they have sent in. They're overseas, and they managed to get an email letter. So, if you don't mind, I'll read that into the record. To Oak Bay Council, redevelopment of 2031 Runnymede Avenue. My name is David Naismith, and I'm writing on behalf of myself and my wife, Jo Marie Naismith. We live at 885 Runnymede Place. Our home is separated from the proposed site of development by one lot. I'm just
going to stop you there. I mean,
oh, sorry.
That is one of the letters that we have before us.
Okay, so you've already received that?
So we have that, yeah.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that they are extremely opposed to this.
No, we have their letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to make everybody count in height order.
My name is Giles Deschner. I live at 931 Runnymede Place. I oppose this bylaw. Firstly, the issue of increased density bothers me. I filled in the survey for the new OCP for Oak Bay, and the question about density asked me only how did I want more density in Oak Bay. There was no option to say, I don't want any more density in Oak Bay. So I filled in that survey as best I could. If there is to be more density in Oak Bay, this is not the way. The process for this hearing appalls me. It's just like last time. It's an ambush. The last time this happened, there was a demonstration in a public meeting which was packed, standing room only. And I suggest if you approve after tonight, you turn your minds to what might happen, what the public reaction might be to that decision, and what might happen at the next election. The lot which is proposed to be subdivided has been a complete mess for the last 5 years. This is not my opinion. This is proven. If you look at pages 27 to 29 of the photographs that were submitted by the applicant, you see the mess that we've had to put up with on this street because they showed you where they dump all of the construction materials. They're right on this lot I presume it was done to show that the lot needs some work, but we live on this side of the street, and we've had to deal with it, including a mattress that was dumped on the hedge and stayed there for more than 6 months. I do have a question for council. I read through the proposed HRA, and I couldn't see any suggestion of a prevention of future subdivision on either lot. This came up at the last public meeting 7 years ago, and it has not been addressed in these current materials that I can see. It's 1.25 acres. How many times will this be fought? If the house and garden heritage listing is ignored today, why will it not be ignored again in the future? This is a nice, quiet character street. My 9-year-old and my 12-year-old play hockey and baseball on the street. They walk and bike to school around this blind, narrow corner where it is proposed that there be a new driveway, a new lot, and a reduction in the minimum setback from 7.6 some metres to 3 metres. Runnymede Place is the type of street that makes Oak Bay what it is. I like it. Mrs. Ellis liked it. Why would you want to change our city in this way? Why? Why are you considering? I mean, you have to consider it in the process, but why would you want to vote for this?
Thank you very much. In front of the microphone, please.
I'm going to refer to my notes, so I'll move the microphone over.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem with that.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you for listening to our comments this evening. My name is Sean Sweeney. I live at 2028 Runnymede Avenue, which is directly across the street from the north side of the subject property. I live there with my wife and my daughter. We bought the property in 2012, and we undertook a substantial renovation that was completed in 8 months. The extent of disrepair of the house and the property at the time that we purchased it was similar to the subject property when it was acquired in 2013. This has been going on too long, and the manner in which the work has been undertaken has shown considerable disregard for the neighborhood. Now, let me just say 3 things. We are opposed to the subdivision. We are opposed to the proposed setbacks. My wife and I are not opposed in principle to the approval of the additional suite. However, before it is approved, we ask that you first make arrangements in consultation with the neighborhood and the owners to ensure that the visual pollution that is associated with the tenants and their vehicles is mitigated. Now, let me talk about setbacks. I'm sorry, I'll talk about subdivision first. The (1980) bylaw 3343 has a preamble that says, whereas the municipal council has determined that the land and the residents located at 2031 Runnymede Avenue are of significant heritage value to the community. And I have to emphasize, they made a determination at that point. That's the language of the motion, that it wasn't just the house itself, it was also the land. The question that we now have is, what has changed? Have we now determined that the land is of lesser significance than it was in 1980? And let me add this. These same developers made an application to subdivide this property in 2011. Council rejected it at the time. What's changed? The work to the residents has apparently been completed. What is the evidence? What are the compelling reasons why this land no longer needs the protection that previous councils have recognized? Because, in my view, for you to approve this subdivision, you're going to have to first make a determination that the value of the lands has diminished since 1980. And I would argue, in fact, quite the opposite. In an era where there's increasing pressure on development from all fronts, now is the time when this property needs more protection than ever before. I'll echo the comments about Mrs. Ellis. She made a gift to the community in 1980 that had economic consequences for her and her family and her estate. It meant that the property was less attractive than it might have been had it been unencumbered. If you approve this, it will be a betrayal of the gift and the endowment of the Ellis family. The other point I make in relation to endowments is that if this is now taken out of protection, what is the message that you are sending to other members of the community who might consider making other endowments for the benefit of our community in the future? Certainly, if someone is going to make a gift like this to the community, there has to be a high degree of confidence that that gift will endure. The other precedent is the one that's been spoken to previously by several of the speakers. The Runnymede Mountjoy cluster of houses contains many large properties and many residents with recognized heritage value. It is a special part of Oak Bay. If you approve this, then the message you send is that no property, none of them, will be safe from applications for panhandles, subdivisions, and so on and so forth. I want to talk about setbacks. If you walk around our street and around Mountjoy, what you will see are homes that have setbacks at between 20 and 40 meters from the street. What is proposed are 3 meters. That is a drastic and radical departure from the character of the neighborhood and the values that have been recognized up until now. It will significantly alter the streetscape, and it will drastically affect the views that we have when we look out our front and side windows. I read the materials yesterday and today that are available online. I could find no compelling reason for the setbacks. The other concern that we have is we don't know what the residences will look like. And they are going to be built or proposed to be built right up against the street. And based on what we've seen on the performance of the developers to date, is that they don't have much regard for the aesthetic impact on the neighbors. In my view, you cannot certainly speak to the issue or consider the issue of setbacks unless you know what it's going to look like from the street when these additional buildings are constructed. I would also add that the impact on the berries will be shocking. The last point I want to make relates to consultation, and I've set out the arguments or the issues in the letter we sent today. The facts are, with respect to this process, that the developer's been working on it for years. They've had assistance of consultants for years. They appear to have been working with city staff for several years. They've appeared before council previously. Throughout this time, we haven't heard once from them with respect to this proposal. Not once. We didn't learn about the hearing tonight until we received a letter 10 days ago. My wife and I are busy. We work full time. We didn't get a chance to start looking into the file at City Hall and reviewing the material online until Friday. We knocked door to door on our street this weekend, and were surprised to learn that many members of our neighborhood had no notice at all of this public hearing. Several of our neighbors are away and did not have an opportunity to provide their input, and certainly not to appear tonight. Other members signed the petition, but didn't have the time to write a letter or appear and have their views known. So we have on the one side developers that have been working on this for years, who've had every opportunity to get their ducks in a row. In the meantime, there's no neighborhood consultation, and then we're given 10 days at best notice of this hearing. It is a seriously flawed process. Seriously flawed process. What I'm going to ask is that if you are not going to reject the applications outright, at the very least, you table this issue. You consult with the neighbors, and we set out a time frame so that the neighbors' views can be heard. There can be a more transparent process for consultation so that you can hear from all impacted neighbors, all impacted community members, in a reasoned way and not with rushed submissions. Because that's what you've heard from today. We've all been rushed to scramble to get our thoughts together for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Call for a second time for speakers. I call for a third time for speakers. Okay. Now, no more speakers. There was a couple of questions that I had for staff. I'm not sure if they would know the answer. One had to do with has this been to, first of all, to the Heritage Commission? Right?
Yes, it has. It went to the Heritage Commission in 2017. I can get you the date. Just 1 second.
No, date's not that important, but can you tell us what their synopsis was?
Sure, I'll just flip to the recommendation really quick. The recommendation was in favor of, just looking to the...
Okay. I see now at the microphone, someone from the Heritage Commission, I believe the chair.
Bronwyn Taylor. I live in Oak Bay, and I'm currently the chair of the Heritage Commission.
Maybe you can help us then.
I believe what we approved in 2017 was the window replacements and the back stairs,
All right.
not a subdivision.
All right.
And also, I only got wind of tonight because of an ad in the Oak Bay News last week. I think it should have rightly have come to the Heritage Commission, and it did not.
That's an option. Just a minute, please, 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 please. My other one, and yeah, go ahead.
Just the Heritage recommendation was contained in the September 1, 2017 report to Committee of the Whole. This report does indicate that it did, the Heritage Commission did consider the subdivision. Discussion from members included comments on rock gardens were not included in the statement of significance. Ultimately, the recommendation to consider approving the Heritage Revitalization Agreement was made at that meeting.
All right. We can do that in a minute. And it might, well, actually, it might be the appropriate time. Now, could you have the motion you can actually read to us?
Well, from the report, the exact words in the report are: the Heritage Commission recommended that Council consider approving the Heritage Revitalization Agreement application, HRA, and the Heritage Alteration Permit to allow for the two-lot subdivision and restoration works of the existing home at 2031 Runnymede. I'll just flip to the minutes real quick.
Thank you.
Sorry, as I flip.
No, it's fine.
So in the minutes from the meeting, and apologies, it was actually July 12, 2016. It was moved and seconded to recommend that Council approve HRA, this our HRA and the HAP associated. The Commission stated the proposal should be subject to including the rock wall and land features in the Statement of Significance and Heritage Revitalization Agreement, and no future subdivision clause to also be included in the Heritage Revitalization Agreement. The motion was carried with one opposed.
Thank you very much. The other question I had then was about 2011. Now, my memory is not perfect from those days, but I do recall the chambers being full of people. My recollection is, and subject to what staff may have to say, was the application wasn't completed. I think it went off to negotiate with our chief administrative officer at the time, but I don't recall it coming back in a final decision. But I stand corrected if anyone has some minutes from those times. But we don't have quick access of the 2011 minutes.
We don't have quick access to those minutes.
All righty. So what I'm going to ask next is the applicant, if wishes to address any of the issues raised without raising new issues, please. And any new issues you raise, I will ask members of the public invite them to reply to that. So just dealing with issues that have been raised.
Yes, one of the issues is relating to 2011. We appeared in front of council a number of times. The final time that we appeared, the vote was 5-2 in favor of moving it along. The HRA wasn't completed. It had taken a significant period of time, and frankly, the Ellis family, who we were working very closely with, and we agreed that we were going to terminate that process because we had not been able to get an actual draft document from Oak Bay over a protracted period of time. And even though at council it had been moved ahead on more than one occasion, we weren't able to conclude an agreement with the staff that were charged with constructing that document and negotiating the terms of it.
if it becomes relevant, it may be important to get a copy of that, because that's, I've had a somewhat similar recollection, but do you remember if there were conditions? Do you have the documents, by the way, from those days? Did you save them?
I may have. I've got quite a lot of documents.
Sure, we have them
relation
in
to
our
this
archives.
property.
It's not a problem.
And it
Right.
was not a public hearing, but there were many people who came and spoke, and it was a very contentious evening. There were a number of issues that were raised by the Ellis family members that were here, who were quite alarmed by some of the public comments that had been made and were quite disturbing for the Ellis daughters that were here that evening. But in the end of the evening, council members who were here voted 5-7 in favor of moving it along.
5 to what?
Sorry, 5-2 to move it. 5-2 to move it along. Sorry.
All right.
The second thing that I think is relevant is when we first addressed council in relation to an application in 2010-11, we were looking at, our application was in relation to a subdivision on the north portion of the property where our application is now. After we abandoned that application and came back later, we applied to a subdivide on the south side of the property, and we talked to a whole variety of people, including some members of the Heritage Commission on a one-to-one basis, talking about that application. We did make an application for a subdivision on the south side rather than the north side, because if you look from an aerial perspective on the property, it looks more conducive on the south side. There's more space. But the approving officer, in his wisdom at that time, turned down that application for a subdivision that was in conjunction with the HRA application. He severed off the subdivision application from the overall HRA application and made a determination as an approving officer that it wasn't in the public interest to make a subdivision on the south side of the property. And he, in his correspondence to us, said he would consider an application on the north side of the property, which is why we reconsidered and came back on the north side of the property, where it is smaller in terms of access to the property. The third thing that's relevant is when we did come in with the application, we were suggesting a smaller lot from an east-west perspective. Rather than go to the back of our property to the east, we were proposing a smaller piece of the north side. And it was your Director of Building and Planning who corresponded with us then at the time, not your current one, who corresponded and said he would like us to consider a more conventionally shaped property. And it wasn't about siting of a house, it was about the property being not, it would have left an orphaned piece at the northeast portion of our property. What we were proposing was subdividing a smaller lot closer to the road, and then having the existing house retain a piece that would be part of the larger property. And he didn't like the configuration of that from the point of view of a subdivision. He thought it was not to be recommended and asked us to reconsider that, which we did. I have had many conversations with neighbors over the years. I'm out in the garden all the time. I try to, if people ask me questions, I try to give them what is the current information. We've had signs, 3 large signs on our property since May of 2017.
And what do the signs say, sorry?
They talk about this application. And they talk about, what we want to do with the property. It's astounding to me that people feel like they have not had any opportunity to comment. None of the people who are here tonight opposing this have come to me and told me what their concerns are privately. We did have an open house. Kevin, you were at that open house at our house, and many of the people here attended it. And we had an open house and talked about the application. What month would it have been? I'm sorry, I don't remember. This application has gone on for so many years. I frankly have to confess that sometimes I lose track of the dates. But I know, Kevin, you were there. I believe, Tara, you attended. There were many, many of our neighbors there. And we talked quite openly about what it was that we were proposing. So the notion that people haven't had an opportunity to find out anything strikes me as a bit disingenuous.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else that I could answer in terms of questions that came up?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you very much. And it's up to you you've rebutted some of these things, and that was your opportunity. Thank you.
Is there an opportunity to speak?
Like a sir rebuttal? Well, if you wanted to address something new that came up, because otherwise we're going to go back and forth, and that's not appropriate. Perfect. I gave the applicant an opportunity to respond. And if you feel that she brought up something new, so just tell us what the new item was and address only that.
The heritage process for the revitalization, 2016, it's obsolete. The work's being done. It's obsolete. We already have an opinion from someone from the Heritage Society now, or Commission now. You should ask the Heritage Commission now about that. Mr. Mayor, don't... just be careful about manipulating the conversation. I think it's really important to get the honest, the facts and opinions of people in the know. And if someone from the Heritage Commission now has some serious issues with how this has all gone, really, it's probably behooves you to step back and discuss that. It's not up to the neighbors to go and ask the applicants about what they're planning. In fact, the sign was misleading. It had a property, the subdivision was different on the sign for the last 7 months, I'm not sure what it's been, than what's in the application. There's misinformation here. I don't know if the municipality is aware of that. If you were, you shouldn't have had this meeting. That should have been repaired.
Okay. Thank you. And that was one of the reasons, by the way, I asked our staff to read out the actual motion that was passed. So, motion. Yep, the motion. Thank you. Was there anybody else? Yes. Yes. Addressing the new issues raised by.
New issue is that as I am on the south side of the property, immediate neighbor, about probably last year or 2 years ago, I was in the garden. It was Sunday, early afternoon, and there was a young family with the children, actually just mother and 2 or 3 children, and the developer, Hillier, was virtually showing them off that part of the property. Obviously, they have a second plan. So if this plan will not go through, they are going to manipulate you and us into agreeing. Besides, they are clearly manipulating us to forget that this property, the land and the house, are heritage.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lupin. Now, seeing no one else, I'm going to see if there's any questions. Okay. This isn't a matter of re-arguing. It's just something new that's come up for you. Okay.
Yes. The suggestion that the neighbours and people of interest have had ample opportunity to respond is not correct. I have been past this property almost daily for 7 months, and I've been waiting for the notice of the meeting to go up in the little corner of the sign. And it's the children are back at school for the first week, and I'll admit it's been a bit chaotic. So I didn't even see it, not once. There was no public notification that this was before the Heritage Commission, and if anybody here other than the applicant knew that had happened, I'd be surprised. I learnt yesterday just how many times this has been before the council with no public notice at all. This is not the first time that you've heard about this property since 2011, but I've been watching the sign waiting for my chance to participate. And I found out on Friday because Sean Sweeney told me, not because I saw the sign. And so the idea that this has been an appropriate process and that neighbours and the community have had ample opportunity to respond is quite frankly outrageous.
Thank you. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if council has any questions for staff, and then I'm going to invite a motion to adjourn or any other motion that may be appropriate. Okay. Councillor Ney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through your chair to staff, I just want to ask a couple questions around the consultation process, if I may. The one thing around, I do appreciate it was some time ago the Heritage Commission had it, so I can appreciate the fading memory of this item coming before the commission, but what I'd like to ask of staff is when it did go to the Heritage Commission in 2016, what did they see? Is it the same application that we have here before us this evening? Is it exactly the same? That's what I'd like. That's the first question.
Yeah, as far as I understand it, is the same.
Can we verify that? Is it possible to verify that? Because there seems to be some confusion here around, I mean, if we need to rely or take seriously the recommendation from Heritage, I would like to know that they were looking at the same thing we're looking at right now.
Well, maybe, sorry, you want to go?
I believe that one of the big changes from what Heritage would have seen previously is the shape of the northerly lot. So the lot to the north would have been smaller, and it's now been expanded. So it's a larger lot now. That would have been one of the big differences.
Can we, I would really like to understand precisely exactly what they saw and look at that in relation to what we're looking at right now. Is that possible?
Your Worship, if that were the desire of council, then that's something that council may ask for at the council meeting when this item is considered.
That we wouldn't be able to produce that tonight, and we wouldn't have an opportunity to make comparisons, would we?
It's right here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Your Worship, we as staff wouldn't have an opportunity to put these.
Just if you can just give that to the clerk, please. Thank you. You can give that to Ms.
Your Worship, just to be clear, we as staff have not or would not have an opportunity immediately to look at what went forward then and now and make comparisons. I think that would be helpful to council. That would be something that would, if that's something that council wanted, we could certainly do that, but it would take some time.
Yeah, so what about the option then of, assuming it's going to take some time, adjourning this public hearing to bring that information back so people can comment on that when we reconvene? Is that another option?
Your Worship, what normally would happen in a public hearing and when you consider a proposal like this or any kind of land use proposal is you would have your public hearing, you would adjourn your public hearing, and then at the council meeting, council would ask us if there are specific pieces of information that you would like to assist you in making the decision. You would ask us for that, and we would bring that back to you.
Okay. But because this information is not before the public now, is there a requirement that they be given an opportunity to comment on that new material, if I can put it that way?
Your Worship, the answer, I see some nodding heads. The answer to that, though, is no. I'm giving you the legal answer, right? So what council does have different opportunities. I mean, you are in control of this process. You could adjourn the public hearing. You could find out new information. You could decide at that point if you thought that it was significant enough or important enough that you would require some additional process, and you could do that. You could have another public hearing. The other option for you, if you want, you could actually recess, I hate to say it, you could recess this public hearing and you could adjourn it to what's called a date and time specific. So you could say, you know what, we want some additional information and we're going to meet next on such and such a date. But you would need to decide tonight when that date is and the time of that meeting in order to satisfy the legal requirements. So there are different options for you.
Okay, because the other piece of information that I think, because there's quite a lot of reference to it, was the decision, if any, that occurred in 2011. And I think that could be resolved fairly easily with reference to the minutes we didn't videotape in those days, but we certainly have minutes from that time that might be of importance. So, okay, any other questions for council, by council of staff on the procedural issues? Go ahead, please.
Just one more question.
And then we'll go over to
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Braithwaite.
Did then this ever go to the committee of the whole, what we're looking at today? It was? And can you tell me the date of that, please?
I can.
Oh, it was in July. Oh, that was what we have.
Mr. Buffett?
Yeah, just flipping through to get the exact date. So, Committee of the Whole, September 1, 2017.
September 18th.
Oh, sorry, the date of report is September 1.
And the meeting?
Okay, yeah. September. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to know. And that's the same application we have before us tonight. Okay.
Okay.
So the community did have an opportunity to have input at that time. It was a committee of the whole, correct?
It was a committee of the whole.
Yeah.
It would have been open to the public.
So the public had an opportunity to have input into the application we have before us this evening.
Yes.
Okay.
In September. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
It wouldn't have been a public hearing.
No, it was a committee of the whole.
It would have been a committee of the whole meeting.
Which is the opportunity for the public to have input into an application going before council. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, are you leaning forward to hit your microphone?
Your worship, I just want to be clear. So yes, there would be a committee of the whole. That agenda is publicized on the website, but there's not a formal notification as there would be for a public hearing like we're having tonight of the application.
Different kind of notification, right? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor. So one of the other issues I've heard from the public, through you, Chair, to staff is they weren't receiving notices. Could you clarify, please, the distance of issuing notices to the neighbors in this instance?
It would be 50 meters, 50.
50 meters. So that would be how many? That would be
150 feet.
100. That would be 4 residences would have been notified. Would that be right? How many? Do you know how many notices actually went out?
I'd have to take a look into the file to see.
I would be interested in that information, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Thank you. My biggest area...
Now, I'm just going to ask the muttering stop because it's difficult to hear. Okay.
My biggest area of concern is in regards to the notification that's on the property. So we've heard a number of people say that the notification that's on the property is different than a notification that was given out to people in their mailboxes in the 50 meters. So can we get clarification as to what the sign said and and if it matched exactly what the notification was?
Staff, please.
So if I may, the illustrative concept plan for the lots on the sign is slightly different than what you see in the notice and in the current application.
So if I can have a follow-up with that. So then does that not mean that we should have put a different notice up on the site so that it matched, or is that not something that we would normally do? Because to me it would seem that if people are there walking by, they should have an indication of exactly what the other people that are being notified would have.
Actually, the notice provisions are to indicate in general what the application is for and the location of the application. Those are the requirements for notice. It would have been helpful if the applicant would have put a sticky of a new concept plan on there, but it's not a requirement.
I find that really surprising, but thank you.
Okay. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Murdoch? Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, just a couple of, remind me here in terms of what notifications are actually required in this process. I'm looking at my notes. We did have a committee of the whole meeting on September 18th. This was discussed, and then that was a recommendation to council to move forward with the process on September 25th. There are variances involved in this for setback. Would there be any notification through the variance process at any point here, or is that essentially the recommendation now, and that variance notice comes to this?
Those are included in the Heritage Revitalization Agreement notification.
Okay,
They're
so
not separate.
Okay, and that was the 50-meter notification.
Yes,
process.
which is our procedures bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I have, and that's notification for this public hearing, essentially. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I had was just related to the point raised about the no future subdivision clause, and this was, if I went through the minutes of that committee of the whole meeting on September 18th, 2017, and there was in the minutes, it was further clarified that the intent is for a clause to be included in the agreement prescribing future subdivision. I understand there's some difficulty with having that within the legal framework of an HRA or a subdivision process. Can you just maybe touch on that a little bit about what the options are with that in considering this application? And because I think that is a significant concern for people in this audience and in the community about the future protection of lands like this.
Yes, if I may, the HRA, or Heritage Revitalization Agreement, is intended to provide direction regarding subdivision, in this case the proposed subdivision, and that's what would be in the agreement. To have something in a Heritage Revitalization Agreement that speaks to an additional matter associated with subdivision would be giving direction to the approving officer that wouldn't be appropriate within the agreement. Also, I should note that we all have zoning on our properties that has certain lot sizing that allows for us to subdivide, and we can't take away the opportunity for people to make an application with respect to subdivision. We can certainly deliberate on that as our approving officer would do so. So I think in terms of the intent around the concern around the heritage property and additional or further subdivision, certainly would be carried forward through the minutes and the record of information associated with this when that's being considered, for example, by an approving officer if there is in fact a further subdivision that comes forward.
Thank you. And just, is it necessary for, I mean, we've heard here tonight there's sometimes a bit of confusion as to what the actual words of various, what was said at various things, especially in some of the subcommittees like Heritage when the recommendations are made. Is it possible to append some of those actual motions? And there was in fact a motion, like I said, or actually it wasn't. It was just part of the conversation recorded in the minutes, though, to record those sort of intents. So, in the consideration of this subdivision, it's looking at this property as a whole and the intent of keeping that whole. Do those minutes essentially get appended to that file so that the HRA sort of has those notes attached to it?
Yes, in terms of our system, everything associated with the property is placed in the system we call Prospero, but it basically, you can see all the permits and all the processes that are associated with that. So when the approving officer, for example, might be going in to consider a subdivision application, which I should clarify we don't have for this property, we have a concept shown as part of this, they would be reviewing all of that material. So there wouldn't be a need to append it by an action by council. It's a matter of record associated with that property, and it's associated with the heritage considerations for that property.
And a final question, the plans that are provided within this package for the new building on lot 2, are those prescriptive then, or is this sort of an intention of design that final design would go through some approval process in future?
I apologize, I didn't catch the first part of that, but the process would be, we don't, apart from the HRA, we don't have any of the other processes in play at this point in time, and that's what's outlined in the report. We would be going forward with consideration of the subdivision, for example, when that's applied for. So those are subsequent considerations.
Okay, so we're working off the working drawings here. There are variances attached to that new building, though, that are part of this application. So do those variances get approved as part of this process, or does that then handle it at a separate time?
They're included in the agreement, yes.
But
not the subdivision.
Okay, but not the final design of the new house is not included. Just the setbacks.
Not in the agreement. The final design is a subsequent review.
Okay, just for all of our understanding, then that review process, because I think it is a consideration for. I know when the Heritage Commission looked at this, that was looked at as that house sort of in keeping with, et cetera. Where does that review process go? Like, what is that process in terms of review? Is that coming to council, or is it just to staff, or where does that go?
So if the approving officer places a design covenant through the subdivision process onto the property, which is one of the powers that they're enabled to do, then it could come back through the advisory design panel and then through council for final siting and design. That's a piece that would be exercised, I believe, at the discretion of the approving officer, and if they deem it necessary to place that design covenant on there, which has been the practice in the past in Oak Bay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Zelka, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have I guess a number of questions. I'll sort of maybe try to work backwards chronologically. I noticed in Schedule A plan of subdivision related to this bylaw, did I hear staff correctly saying that this is a proposed subdivision? Because since I guess it's we're trying to provide an illustration of what's going on, but really it's up to the approving officer. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I understand this is one step towards the subdivision process, and I presume that what is illustrated in Schedule 1 plan of subdivision as part of this bylaw is what the proponent is asking for?
Yes.
Okay, so as of today, the proponent is asking for a rather large lot 1. But when I go back into the minutes, in particular, on September 18th, 2017, let me pull that up here, and I look at Report Attach 1 Site Plan, which is the file called Report Attach 1 Site Plan. If I look at the date of that one, it is September 5th, 2017. Original date, May 2nd, 2016. It shows a much smaller piece of property. It seems to me that that piece of property, or what is illustrated there, was probably what went to the Heritage Commission. Could you comment on that, please?
I believe that's correct, and that this is this smaller lot is the smaller lot configuration that I was referring to before. I was not taking this application through that heritage meeting, right. So I'm very confident that this is it, but I'm not 100%. So I just wanted to, bring that. But yes, this attachment that you refer, that is the smaller lot. That is the sort of original plan that would have been consistent with what Heritage saw originally.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I just want, but then just to confirm, do I need to pause? Shall I continue, Chair?
I was just actually asking if Tom Croft was there, and he said yes. So that must have been seconds later, and I guess he was timed out. Councillor Croft, I don't even have to yell, do I? He's not there. Okay, so we should just wait for him. We'll see to reconnect him. But he said, he texted me to say he had no questions, but then he...
At the tone, please state your name, followed by the number sign. Announcing participants. Warren.
All right, we're back online with Councillor Croft. Thanks a lot, Councillor Croft. Just to confirm, Councillor Zelka has the floor, but you have no questions after that? Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka. And then we'll have Councillor Kirby.
Thank you very much, Chair. Much appreciated. And welcome back, Councillor Croft. So we're looking at report attachment 1 site plan dated September 2017. And it also implies in the lower right-hand corner that there was an earlier version from May of 2016 that might be even further different. So just to confirm with staff, the fact that these illustrations are different, is that germane to the comments and approvals and recommendations from staff and various commissions?
What council has before it is what council should be considering, and that is part of the history of this process. But what you have before you with respect to the HRA in your package and the plans associated are what you should be using for your review and consideration following the public hearing.
Very much appreciate that. So you're going then back to Schedule A, which is in the actual bylaw. It does not show a future garage, but it does indicate a house. Is that germane to our deliberations?
So just so speaking to Schedule 1 plan of subdivision from the bylaw, it shows the survey and the underlying features that are presently on the lot. So it's showing us the house, the heritage home, the main home, and then it's showing us the footprint of the older garage, which is also labeled as to be removed. It's not showing us the footprints of future development. Mm-hmm. All of that would be as per the zone / as per if this heritage revitalization agreement were adopted and those variances that have been discussed here. Everything aside from those variances would have to meet zone standard. Yes.
So then just, I'm sure this has been clarified by others, but I guess I didn't hear it. So we're not actually approving the location of the garage at this point, if there even is a garage, for example.
So speaking to the garage, the proposed garage that would be on the large lot, the southerly lot, the position of that, as far as council's approval would go, would be just limited to the requested variance. So the variance that changes it from the 7.62 meter down to the, I believe it's 3.92. I just have to flip through to see exactly, but in that ballpark. That's the change that council would be making. Everything else has to be built as per zone RS4.
Excellent. So thank you. So the intention of those variances is to provide some space and elbow room for some future thing to be done, assuming the approving officer is playing ball as well.
Yeah, it would enable the placement of any future structures to comply with those specifically varied features, and only that. Everything else would have to be as per zoning.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. So I wanted to move on to another element. With respect to the, I'm going to speak to the statement of significance aspect. If we approve this, the statement of significance dated 2015, will it replace any existing statement of significance? Or the list of character defining elements, will they be replaced by this new list of character defining elements?
Yes.
So I ask that. So this was why I asked the question earlier on. What are the current statement of significance, and what is the current list of character-defining elements? Now, the only character-defining elements I was able to find on the oakbay.ca website in the heritage section actually lists something quite different. Well, it's similar, but quite different than what is proposed in the 2015 revised statement of significance. And I wanted to linger on that for a moment, please, because I think it's germane to what's being proposed here. Let me just pull that up, please. Hold on. Where did I find? Oh, there it is. So I've got that one. So in the, I guess I'd have to say, existing character-defining elements, as pointed out in the Blair Gowie House, in the heritage section of the Oak Bay website, it has similar, the first number of elements are relatively similar, but at the end, the last point is relatively different. And I'll just read what the existing one is, and it says a character-defining element is landscape features such as mature coniferous and deciduous trees, including a specimen, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, Cedrus atlantica, something, and a number of mature Gary oaks, I believe that's what that is, and semicolon, and this is, I think, the operating thing, semicolon, series of terraced rock gardens. And I believe that last point around the landscape features in the terraced rock gardens speaks directly to the land element of the heritage statement of significance aspect of this property. Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, certainly that last point is not in the new statement of significance.
No, it is not. In the new statement of significance, I think it replaces it, and I'm going to pull it up because I need to see it. I think it actually says featuring or including, but not being a character-defining element. It takes a moment for these things to open. Just a moment here. There it is. I've got it here now. Thank you. So on the last point, it replaces the last element on the character-defining elements as associated landscape features, such as mature coniferous and deciduous trees, including that Latin tree I can't pronounce, and the Gary oaks. And it says nothing about the terraced rock gardens. Could you please comment on the absence of the terraced rock gardens and the word associated being on the character-defining elements versus it being a landscape feature? Please.
The minor point, I believe, is associated. It's associated with the heritage property, so it's really just a word difference. It doesn't mean anything different with respect to the values.
No, please.
It's my opinion that it does not mean any different.
Okay.
So the second point
yes.
is that with respect to the landscape garden, I think that was your...
The terraced rock garden.
Right.
That is absent.
I'm just going to interject here for just a moment because I think we need to decide. We're 45 minutes into a 7 o'clock meeting already, and I think we need to decide at council what we're going to do. And I think some of these questions, I think, could be at council meeting if we decide to send this to council, or it could form part of an information request if we're going to recess this particular hearing. My understanding of the difference between recess and adjourn is we don't want to adjourn it because then we have to re-advertise, but if we recess it to another date certain, then we can continue. So, and I think perhaps some of these questions can be brought up at then, or if you have if we end up recessing it, then I will ask you, Councillor Zelko, if you have specific information requests you'd like to be brought back for the new date. Yes. Is that all pretty clear?
I think your suggestion is a reasonable one. It would also provide the public more opportunity to comment, assuming the public hearing would continue.
Well, that'll be something council will decide. If the motion to adjourn, that closes it, and we go to council, and we go to sitting as a council, not as a public hearing, and if we move to recess here, we can come back and continue this process with more information before us. But I should inform you, when we do that, because there's new information, the public will have a renewed period of time to make submissions. So I know you had your hand up too, Councillor Kirby, and I appreciate that. Was it on the issue of what should come next? Because I think that's what we have to decide at this point, what the next steps are. What do we want to do? I have no questions. I will going to put a bookmark on those questions and come back. Councillor Kirby, was it to do with what the next steps are?
My question was to clarify, just for information about the separation between subdivision and the HRA, and the decision of the former director, building and planning, with the shape of the lot. Okay. And I just wanted to confirm that whether or not the lot size that the applicant had submitted was increased by the former director of building and planning.
Okay.
And or not.
Okay. Now, is that a question, Mr. Jones or Mr. Anderson, that would be more appropriate when we're at council than at this point when we're deciding what the next steps are?
Your Worship, it really depends on what council wants to do. Are you interested in recessing the public hearing? And what that would mean is that you would recess to what's called a date and time specific.
Right.
So you would say, we're going to recess the meeting and reconvene it on September 24th at 6 p.m. It would not be re-advertised. It would be just finish now and we're restarting it. We as staff would, before you recessed, appreciate any opportunity to understand what additional information you're looking for, because that would help us. So that's one option. Your other option is to adjourn, and if you adjourn the public hearing, then this item would come up on the agenda, and you would have, I guess, all sorts of options for you. But you could choose to consider the bylaws, or you could at that time say, you know what, we would like some additional information, and you as council, by way of a resolution, because that's what's required of you, would ask staff for information on X, Y, and Z. And that is the information that we would bring back to you when you have your council meeting, and we'd actually ask you again for a resolution receiving and accepting that information. So those are, I mean, there's lots of options, but those are kind of, I think, the two that you're talking about.
Okay, so we have really two options, and I'm going to look for a motion on one or the other.
Before we go there, I would like the opportunity to provide those questions that we'd like to have answered.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to just finishing it.
And I think that's what staff exactly was saying, that before we leave tonight, if we recess, before we formally recess, we'll give that list. If we adjourn, then that's something you can ask at council meeting. Okay? See what I mean?
So I would make a motion to recess.
Second.
Okay. Now, we have to have a date certain, and through my exchange with the CAO, we have either the 24th of September, which is a week tonight at 6 o'clock, or October the 9th. But maybe we can, because we can re-recess if on October the 24th. So maybe that's a start. So what's the druthers for council about the 24th? Because that is a committee of the whole date, is it not? I'll pull up my calendar. Yeah, that's a committee of the whole day. So we could start on this at 6 o'clock. So would the mover care to add that into the motion, either the 24th or the 9th? You're the mover.
I think I would actually prefer the 9th, but I would go with whatever the consensus of council would be.
I was just going to ask if we know how extensive the agenda for the 24th is at this time. Just if we're adding something.
I think they're all going to be packed between now and then.
Your Worship, we don't know yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the 9th an option?
I think that's going to be quite busy, but okay. So why don't we start on the 24th, see if we get the information back in time, and then if we don't feel that we're equipped at that point to have enough information, we can ask for more and then go to the 9th.
Okay, so I'll say the 24th.
Right,
of
the
September.
24th at 6 p.m. All right. So I'm going to call the vote on that, and before we before we stop for the evening, then I'm going to ask for a list of information that people want. I think we've already established some of them. Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we have, it is Councillor Zelka opposed. We will go to the 24th. Now, let's put a list of, sorry. Okay, so thank you very much. So I think we've already referred to some of the documents. Is there additional documents that we want before us on the 24th, please? Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. I would very much like to know, what is the existing statement of significance that is in effect today? What are the character-defining elements that are in effect today? What does it mean in the 1980 bylaw that's currently still in effect, Bylaw 3343, when it says under Section 11 of the Heritage Conservation Act that the lands, the entire lot and one building is declared a municipal heritage site pursuant to the provisions of Section 11. What does that mean? And I noticed that there are other sections in that Heritage Conservation Act that talk about providing money from council to the owner about possible changes in terms of value. Was money paid to the owner in exchange, in good and equal or fair exchange for this heritage designation application? As per that Heritage Conservation Act, I think it's Section 12 basically says that something would be done as a result of this being applied. So the question is, was it done? And what are the details, please?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so that's information arising from the contract or the decision. Yes, Councillor Ney, information you want brought back, please.
So, as mentioned previously to staff, yeah, I'd like to see the actual application that was presented to the Heritage Commission and the actual site drawings application that the Committee of the Whole saw on September 19th, at which nobody from the public made any comment. I'd like to know what was there, and then in relation to what we've got at this time, if there's any difference at all. And then I'd like to know how many people were given notification, because I think those are quite large lots, and if the notification wasn't...
Okay, just you want the number of people notified? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's
Thank you. Councillor Kirby? You're okay?
I think my questions were well, there was something that I can bring up at the next meeting. Yes. I don't think it's necessarily something they need to prepare for. I think they have that information.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, is there any extra information you require?
I think mine have been covered except for the notification that's on the board as compared to the notification that was given out to residents. And then I'm curious about the timing on the subdivisions for the north side and the south side, because I'm wondering if that's where a little bit of the confusion is coming from, is that a lot of people thought that there was a subdivision on the north side and weren't aware of the one on the south side, so perhaps something about that.
If there's disclosable documents with respect to that, could they be included, please? Councillor Murdoch?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Zelka again. And then you, Councillor Croft, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. Sorry, I was just reminded of one more thing. Are there, if it's possible to have access to the approving officer's documents from 2011, and if there are any preliminary approving officer documents with respect to what could be shared at this point, I think that it would be useful to see those. Thank you.
Okay. Where appropriate. Okay. You've got a question now again, Councillor.
I would just request that maybe you clarify the difference between the Heritage Revitalization Agreement and the subdivision and who's responsible for it, because I'm not sure that everybody is aware of where the responsibilities lie and the arrangement we have with an approving officer and council and the separation.
Okay, perhaps a statement to that effect. Okay, and then finally, Councillor Croft.
I meant tonight. I meant maybe right now we clarify that, just because I think there's a lot of people in the audience that are here right now that might not understand that we're not able to comment or participate in that process.
In the subdivision process.
Yes. And okay. I think people need to be very clear that that's the approving officer's responsibility, and it's kept away from council as a political decision, so that we are not able to decide on the subdivision. And I think that needs to be clarified for the public.
And I think you just did. Okay.
I just did.
I think that was quite clear. Thank you. Councillor Croft.
I have no questions.
Thank you very much. So I'm not going to ask for a motion to adjourn. We've already had a motion to recess. We're going to recess now till the 24th of September. We will start council meeting in 4.5 minutes. Thank you. And I think we're going to leave, and then I think they're going to change the cameras and everything. Yeah,